The demon in the woods. The intrepid hikers had embarked on a journey of exploration and excitement, eager to plunge into the uncharted depths of pine forest and escape the banality of everyday life. However, little did they know that what awaited them was beyond the wildest of their imaginations. As they delved deeper into the verdant forest, their senses were heightened, attuned to the myriad of sensations that surrounded them. Suddenly, they stumbled upon an enigmatic burial ground that emanated an air of ancient mystery and wonder, with intricate symbols and carvings etched into the stones. However, an ominous and sinister aura permeated the air, hinting at the presence of something malevolent that had been lying dormant for centuries. Initially, the hikers remained blissfully unaware of the evil that lurked beneath the surface, but as the night unfolded, they began to detect an insidious force that was slowly encroaching upon them. A disembodied whispering voice, almost ethereal in its nature, began to insinuate itself into their minds, leading them down a path towards darkness and doom. As the night progressed, a sense of foreboding and apprehension grew stronger within them. They could feel the malevolent force closing in, like a predator stalking its prey. And then it happened. One of the hikers began to exhibit inexplicable behavior, his voice morphing into an otherworldly demonic timbre. The other hikers watched in mounting horror as their companion's body convulsed and writhed, as if being manipulated by an unseen hand. Despite their attempts to intervene, the demonic force had taken hold, transforming their once friend into an unrecognizable, twisted version of himself. As the night dragged on, the possessed hikers' numbers grew, each one succumbing to the demon's insidious influence. They screamed and writhed, their unhealthy bodies twisted and contorted into grotesque shapes. It was a night of unadulterated terror, a nightmare that would haunt the hikers forever. They were trapped in the forest under the spell of an ancient evil that defied comprehension. By the time dawn finally broke, the hikers had been irrevocably transformed. The demonic force had branded them with its mark, leaving them scarred and changed forever. They knew that they could never return to their previous lives, that they had glimpsed a malevolent power that was beyond their comprehension. As they stumbled back towards civilization, the hikers were consumed by a sense of urgency and responsibility. They had to warn others about the danger that lurked in Pine Forest, to reveal the dark secrets of the ancient burial ground that had claimed their innocence and threatened their very souls. The haunted cabin. The group of friends, their hearts racing with anticipation, finally arrived at the cabin in Pine Forest, ready for a weekend full of excitement and adventure. The cabin, nestled amongst the trees, was a haven of peace and tranquility, a welcome change from the hustle and bustle of city life. As they settled into the cabin, they felt a strange heaviness in the air, a foreboding sense of something ominous lurking in the shadows. They tried to ignore it, dismissing it as just their imagination running wild. But the unease lingered. As night descended upon the cabin, strange noises began to fill the air. Creaks, moans, and whispers seemed to emanate from every corner, sending chills down the spines of the group. Huddled together in fear, they tried to laugh it off, but the unease was too palpable to ignore. It wasn't long before things took a turn for the worse. One of the friends suddenly disappeared, sending the rest into a frenzied panic. They scoured every inch of the cabin, but she was nowhere to be found. Fear crept in as they realized that they were not alone, that something evil was lurking in the shadows. As the night wore on, the group was subjected to inexplicable occurrences. Doors slammed shut on their own, objects moved with no apparent cause, and eerie shadows seemed to dance in the corners of their eyes. They all knew that something was not right, that they were in grave danger, but they could not explain the horror that was unfolding before them. And it was only then that they discovered the horrifying truth. The cabin was possessed by a malevolent spirit, a vengeful ghost seeking revenge on those who dared to enter. The spirit of a woman, brutally murdered within the cabin's walls, had risen to wreak havoc upon the unsuspecting group. As the group desperately tried to flee, they found themselves trapped within the cabin by an unseen force, unable to escape the clutches of the vengeful spirit. Their chances of survival were slim, and they knew that they were facing a desperate struggle for survival against a relentless enemy. In the end, only one of the group managed to escape the haunted cabin, but the experience left an indelible mark upon their soul. The abandoned cabin remained a chilling reminder of the horror that had unfolded there. Years later, the sole survivor of the haunted cabin incident returned to Pine Forest, determined to uncover the truth behind the tragedy. Memories of the terror she had experienced flooded back as she drove through the forest, each passing tree a haunting reminder of the past. The cabin, overgrown and in disrepair, stood as a testament to the horror that had occurred within its walls. The windows boarded up, the front door hanging off its hinges. It was a chilling sight to behold. As she entered the cabin, a chill ran down her spine. The eerie atmosphere still palpable. After all these years, the lone survivor began to investigate, determined to solve the mystery that had haunted her for so long. She pieced together clues, uncovering the story of the previous owner, a woman who had been murdered within the cabin's walls. Her killer, a reclusive man who had harbored a dark secret, had never been caught, leaving the tragedy shrouded in mystery. The lone survivor, driven by a fierce determination, worked tirelessly to uncover the truth, consulting with the townspeople, the police, and scouring every inch of the library for answers. Finally, after months of investigation, she uncovered the truth, revealing the killer's identity and motive. All she felt a sense of closure knowing the truth. The haunted memories of that fateful night lingered. The horror of the haunted cabin would forever haunt her, a constant reminder of the terror that she and her friends had endured. Despite the danger and fear that had enveloped the cabin, the lone survivor couldn't help but feel a strange fascination with the haunting. She began to delve deeper into the paranormal, reading books and attending lectures about ghosts, spirits, and hauntings. Eventually, her passion led her to become a paranormal investigator, dedicating her life to exploring the unexplained and helping others find closure in the face of tragedy and loss. Years passed, and the haunted cabin in Pine Forest became a distant memory. The lone survivor continued to investigate the paranormal, traveling to some of the most haunted places in the world and uncovering the secrets of the supernatural. But she never forgot the cabin and the vengeful spirit that had possessed it. In her heart, she knew that the spirit still lingered, seeking revenge on those who dared to enter its domain. One day, she received a call from a family who had purchased the cabin in Pine Forest. They had heard rumors of the haunting, but they had shrugged them off, thinking it was just local folklore. But as soon as they moved in, they realized that something was not right. Objects moved on their own, doors slammed shut, and strange noises echoed through the halls. The family was terrified, and they begged the lone survivor to help them. Without hesitation, she packed her bags and headed to Pine Forest, ready to confront the vengeful spirit once and for all. As she approached the cabin, she felt a familiar chill run down her spine. The haunted memories flooded back, but she steeled herself, knowing that she had a job to do. She felt the presence of the spirit immediately. It was heavy with a sense of foreboding, and the lone survivor knew that the spirit was watching her every move. Using her experience and knowledge of the paranormal, the lone survivor began to investigate the cabin, searching for clues about the spirit's identity and its motivations. She uncovered evidence that confirmed her suspicions. The vengeful spirit was indeed the ghost of the woman who had been murdered in the cabin years before. But this time, the lone survivor was not alone. With the help of the family, she conducted a series of rituals and ceremonies, invoking the spirit and urging it to move on to the afterlife. After hours of intense and grueling work, the spirit finally moved on. Its vengeful energy dissipated. The cabin was quiet once again, and the family was overjoyed. As the lone survivor packed her bags and prepared to leave, she couldn't help but feel a sense of closure. The haunted cabin had been her greatest challenge, and she had finally triumphed over the vengeful spirit that had haunted it for so long. But she knew that the paranormal world was vast and mysterious, and there were always new challenges and mysteries to explore. And so, with a sense of excitement and trepidation, she set off on her next adventure, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The Possessed Church. In the heart of the dense woods lay the peaceful Pine Forest, a small town where devout people congregated around the church, which was the epicenter of their community. But alas, a mysterious presence had encroached upon the town, festering in the church walls, a demonic force taking hold of the congregation. Upon the arrival of the new pastor, a feeling of wrongness pervaded the air. The people were distant, cold, and unresponsive to his sermons. Vacant eyes and wandering minds filled the pews. As time passed, the pastor began to sense something amiss in the church. The air was thick with an unsettling energy, and strange whispers lingered in the silence. The paintings on the walls moved surreptitiously when he wasn't looking, and the candles flickered wildly without any wind. One night, whilst preparing for the Sunday service, he heard a voice calling out to him from the basement. The voice was deep, guttural, and spoke in an unintelligible language. Fear engulfed him as he descended the stairs, yet the pull was too strong to resist. Upon entering the basement, he found a large pentagram drawn on the floor, surrounded by candles and symbols he had never seen before. In the center of the pentagram was a woman. Her eyes rolled back in her head, her body twisted in unnatural ways. She was chanting in that same guttural language, and the pastor knew then that something was awry. He tried to leave the church, to call for help, but the door was locked from the outside. The windows were too high for him to climb out of, and he was trapped. As days passed, the possession spread throughout the town. The people of Pine Forest began to act like wild animals, attacking each other without any cause, and their bodies underwent a ghastly transformation. Their skin turned pale and gray, and their eyes glowed with an unholy light. The pastor knew he had to act fast. He searched the church, looking for a way to break the possession, and finally he found a book hidden in the attic. It was an ancient tome filled with spells and incantations, written in an incomprehensible language that he somehow understood. With trembling hands, he began to recite the spells, his voice growing louder with each word. The air crackled with energy, and the possessed congregation began to convulse, their bodies writhing in agony. The demons fought back, trying to keep their hold on the people, but the pastor was strong. Finally, with a final burst of energy, the spell was complete. The pentagram in the basement exploded in a shower of sparks, and the demons were banished back to their own realm. The people of Pine Forest slowly returned to their senses, their memories of the possession hazy and confused. They looked to the pastor with gratitude, but he knew that the demons would always be lurking, waiting for their chance to return. He left Pine Forest soon after, determined to never let his guard down again. But he knew that there were other towns, other churches that were also possessed by the same demonic force, waiting for someone to banish them back to hell. The possessed door. On a particularly luminous and sun-drenched day in the midst of Pine Forest, an exuberant young girl was greeted with a parcel. The package contained a meticulously designed doll with curly, golden hair and adorned with a vintage dress, which the girl eagerly unwrapped. As she reveled in her newfound treasure, she spent endless hours indulging in playtime with her newfound companion. As time elapsed, inexplicable events began to unfold. During the night, the girl would awaken to find the doll perched atop her torso with its lifeless eyes fixated upon her. Initially, she shrugged off these occurrences, attributing them to her own imagination. But then the doll commenced to move on its own, adjusting positions or migrating to different areas of the room without justification. As time passed, the girl's demeanor shifted, and she began to feel perturbed by the doll's presence. Yet despite her growing unease, she could not summon the courage to dispose of it. Her temperament altered, and she became irritable and isolated, causing her parents to become concerned for their daughter's well-being. One day, her parents returned to their dwelling to find their daughter situated amid an assemblage of dolls. But these dolls were abnormal, their eyes were empty. The parents advanced towards their daughter, and as they drew nearer, the dolls initiated motion. They raced towards the parents with their lifeless eyes glaring at them. The parents attempted to flee but were ensnared in the room with dolls barricading them in. Everywhere they looked, dolls appeared to be converging upon them, and there was no escape. It wasn't until the girl's parents discovered a journal that was concealed in the rear of their daughter's closet that they comprehended the sinister predicament. The journal was owned by the former possessor of the doll, a young girl who had vanished without a trace. The journal documented the eerie and peculiar happenings that ensued after the doll was introduced into the girl's residence. It spoke of an evil spirit that had taken possession of the doll and would stop at nothing to defend it. The girl's parents realized that their daughter had also fallen prey to the same malevolent spirit. They attempted to eliminate the doll from the room, but it was too late. The spirit had already seized hold, and it was not willing to relinquish its grasp. In the end, the girl's parents were compelled to abandon their abode, leaving everything behind. They understood that the doll was too hazardous to keep, and they did not want to risk any further casualties. Years later, an unassuming family moved into the home, oblivious to the dark and ominous past that was concealed within. But it did not take long before the inexplicable events recommenced, and the possessed doll claimed yet another victim. The possessed playground. The playground nestled within the towering pine forest was once a joyous haven where children giggled with innocent delight. Have a foreboding sense of unease permeated the air as of late. Reports of youngsters returning home with unexplainable bruises and scratches while alleging attacks from an invisible malevolent entity struck fear in the hearts of parents. It all began with the erratic behavior of a boy named Tommy. He would gaze off into the distance with an otherworldly aura, and when he spoke his voice had changed, carrying a menacing tone. The parents at first disregarded it as an imaginative phase, but then more children began to exhibit similar signs of paranormal possession. Soon, a chorus of children with eyes reflecting the same sinister force would converge on the playground, ominously chanting together. The horror-stricken parents realized that something was amiss and called in a priest to perform an exorcism, but even the holy man's rituals could not quell the force that had firmly entrenched itself within the playground's confines. As the possessed children's conditions worsened, their parents became increasingly desperate, attempting to keep them away from the playground. However, it proved futile as the malevolent entity grew stronger with each passing day, extending its grip over innocent souls. With mounting dread, the parents began to fear for their own safety, realizing that the playground had become a breeding ground for evil that could potentially spread beyond its borders. Finally, a courageous parent, armed only with their indomitable faith and unshakable resolve, embarked on a perilous quest to confront the malevolent force. Their discovery was beyond comprehension. The entity had an ancient and malevolent nature, with the power to subjugate and control even the purest of souls. Summoning every ounce of their courage, the parent engaged in a final act of desperation, facing the evil force head-on and eventually banishing it from the playground. The children were finally freed from their possession, and the playground returned to its former state of joy and happiness. However, the parents knew that they could never forget the horror they had witnessed. They realized that the playground would always remain shrouded in darkness, a grim reminder of the malevolent force that they had barely managed to fend off.